and we'll get going. I think I have the first item. I wanted to step through real quick the 12.10 priorities and just see what folks thought about that, and if they had any questions. I will share my screen for this part of it. So I think we all submitted our kickoff videos yesterday. I know for the project management group, solution validation, basically design, we need to improve the milestone view and tracking scope change there. That's like a recurring theme that is blocking people from using GitLab. And then after that, we'd kind of move over to sprints and then replicating some of that stuff into the sprint view as well. The 3 features, shipping the burn up chart to on milestones. I think the underlying data issue has been merged or is about to go through verification. And then pushing more on the real-time updates of assigning a sidebar. John Hope did spin up a working group for this. So I think there's an MR that's open if anybody's interested in joining that. There's been some interest from other stages as well that are interested in doing things there. So that's pretty cool, and that should hopefully help Heinrich out a little bit, because it's a big ask for one person to solve all the problems that need to be solved with that. It's pretty hairy. So I'm glad we're able to get him some support. And then shipping the Jira issues importer MVC. There's some other confidential refactoring tech debt, like using not filters or slow. And then I didn't link it here, but there's a confidential spam finding issue that's we moved into ready for development. Any questions about the project management goals or concerns about it? Things that we should talk about regarding trade-offs?
Just on the real-time thing, the real thing that's holding us back is things that depend on other teams. So, you know, we're going to have a lot of open questions about how we deploy this, how we monitor it, rather than actually the feature. I think Heinrich's made a lot of progress with the feature.
Cool. Yeah, he has. And that's why I think a working group is the right move here, just because like the async nature that we have is great sometimes, but then other times it makes things really go really slow. So hopefully this will help out with that. I think, I don't know if Keenan, are you here? Yes, no.
Yep. Sorry, I was a few minutes late.
Do you want to go through your stuff real quick? I just like, the goal of doing this is just making sure that we didn't put anything in here that is wildly inaccurate, not achievable, / like there are blatant concerns from folks on the teams that we have committed to it. And so it's just like, yeah, I don't know, Keenan, if you want to run through your stuff or not, but that'd be awesome if you did.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't think anything in here should be a surprise. I haven't added anything. So yeah, it's just high-level features we're looking to release. Like, I think, you know, calling out the Jira importer MVC, because that's across the board for all of us. You know, Epic and issue health tracking. Looks like the last issue for that is on the farther end of the in-dev column. So I would hope we'd be able to move that through. Confidential epics, just being able to create new ones and make an existing one confidential, and then drag and drop reassignment, which we've had in the hopper for a while and is hopefully we can get that done. So, and then we had the performance and bug issues that John recommended and surfaced that we'd want to get through too as well. So yeah, I don't think anything too crazy or surprising. And yeah, I think John and Donald, I think we looped on those. So I think we're good.
Cool.
Mark, you want to do the same?
Sounds good. Keep going. Solution validation, we're still working through the quality management MVC. That's been ongoing now for about half a release. We're probably got another release worth of solution validation to do on that one. And we have requirements management to keep us busy in the meantime. So nothing, shouldn't be holding anything up, but we want to get it done. From a design perspective, there's a couple design things out there that Nick's working hard on. The issue participants via email address he's working through. And then once we get requirements done, we wanted to put the count next to them. That was something that got pushed out of the MVC because it just wasn't that critical, but it's a small one. Hopefully that is something we can just sort of throw in the hopper as, you know, more work to be done toward requirements and sort of improve the user experience there or quality of life. I don't think features are anything surprising. The MVC for requirements did not make 12.9, so we're into 12.10. I think everything I've heard thus far is it's not going to take all of 12.10. Should be done relatively quickly. So that's good news. This is in there. It's not a high priority, but I wanted to make sure there's other work there. And we were going to circle back and figure out what else we can do toward requirements to make the MVC even better if possible. Or if it's not possible in this release, then we're going to sort of schedule them moving forward. So that's where we're at with Certify.
Cool. One other random piece of feedback that I got from a customer this week about blocking issues is that they said, like, on the issue board, they want to click on the icon to more or less filter the issue board by all the things that are blocking it, or inversely, the some sort of icon that is like blocking something else. We can talk more about that offline, but that was some interesting feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's getting a lot of adoption. The other thing I wanted to talk to engineering managers about a little bit is how do we add in, or just engineers in general, how do we add in metrics to collect data on this stuff? Because we don't know right now who's using blocking issues, and it's very difficult to try to find that data currently with the measurements we have right now. I'd like to kind of make a push probably in 13.0, or maybe, I don't know when exactly, but to make sure we're adding in the hooks to collect data on, requirements management usage and blocking issues usage, just because I think these features are being utilized. I've heard a lot of great feedback on them, but I'd like to start getting numbers and sort of track adoption of these things, just sort of in the back hopper. So I'm going to create an issue for that, and we can kind of discuss in general for Certify, what do we need to do, and then we can promote it to an Epic and create some sub issues and start kind of getting that work done. If these are small changes, this could also help us fill out, the buckets with a little bit more smaller work for people to do as background tests, which would be great, because I think we'd all like to know sort of the adoption we're receiving. So,
yeah, Mark, I can link that Excel sheet we were riffing on that a couple days ago.
Yeah, there's an Excel sheet, and there's actually an issue out there right now that was started by the I think it's the telemetry team. Where we are going to start, sort of figuring out what we need for telemetry, but that doesn't really do the implementation of it. That's sort of, once the data's in, how are they going to mangle the data so we can easily use it? We need to get the hooks in there, I think, to actually provide the data at some point as well. So we'll work it.
There's two problems there. I think we've been advised, or it's been encouraged, not to use the word telemetry anymore because that's too vague. There's a merge request for that, and it's in the handbook now, because self-manage will need to use the usage pink, and the hooks or whatever. It all is derived from database queries, basically. It doesn't use anything from end user behavior, how we collect stuff on .com with Snowplow. So you can add the hooks in, but you're only going to get information for .com usage. And then we also need to have the usage ping data. So trying to use that as your baseline constraint, which also .com does the usage ping as well. So that's the lowest common denominator you can start with. And then if you want a subset example of some more granularity about behaviors, then you can look at some of the data from Snowplow and kind of understand the user behavior in a more kind of granular way and treat that as a sample size, basically. Just a little context for when you get to it.
Yeah, and the more I look through that, I mean, just as a top level sort of 10,000 foot view look at things, the data team is doing, or telemetry team, or whatever they're going to rename themselves to, is doing an excellent job of trying to provide these metrics, and they've got the SMAU charts out there. The caveat is they're only doing it for specific pieces of data in plan, and none of the service desk things are in there currently. And from what I can tell, they have all this raw data in a database, and then they're mangling it through queries to bring it into a database where they can display it. Our data is not being brought into that database. The certified data is not being brought into that database yet because it's low priority. So we don't have service desk information right now. Not that it's necessarily the right metrics, but we don't have anything. So unless I go and look at raw page views, which is hard for service desk because they're just issues, and the raw page views don't take into account the emails that come in, it's very hard for me to sort of get any read on service desk, which is the one feature that's been launched. And there's nothing that I can tell right now for blocking issues that we can look at, even with page views, because again, when you view blocking issues or you set a blocking issue, there is a click on a button that says add related issue, but it's going to track all related issues from my understanding. not necessarily those with the specific parameter of blocking. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how that works, but I would love to get more granular data. I talked to Justin about this a little bit too. We're really just trying to sort of show that, hey, this is being used and it's going to promote the features even more, which is a good thing. We'll get, we want those to be visible to people and just show them that this is really something people love.
Yeah, I think you just need to update the usage ping because like it's stored in the database. So if it's stored in the database, then it can be retrieved, and that's really just like updating the query and the thing. Because I know service desk issues are pulled out of the usage ping right now. It's not just page views; it's like how many issues were service desk issues, which is sort of like how many people emailed in, because you can have lots of emails associated with one issue. But like there's all sorts of things you can do if you just define the query from the database side of things and put that in the usage.
Right, I can get some of that data, but what I can't get is the granular information of how many people are using it or how is it growing. All I can see is total number of issues, which we can extrapolate to a point. It's not quite what we're long-term what we're looking for. So
yeah, we can't get that until we do user ID stuff, which I think in order to do that, I was talking to the data team, they have to more or less anonymize everything and then tokenize like the anonymous data and store those tokens on with the customer so that we don't ever get it, basically. But anyway, it's complicated. They're doing a good job. But okay, we can go on to the next one. Sorry, I missed the Jira.
Sorry, real quick though before you move on to the next one, because I think we do have some action items there. There's twofold. We need to figure out what we want to put in usage ping, because we can get like the amount of even if it's not like user specific, like at that level of granularity, we can get how many issues have been or are marked as is blocked or is blocked by. We just need to add that data to the usage ping if we want to get that for self-managed instances, which we haven't done. So I think we need to go through Keenan's spreadsheet and just document what we want to track there. And then we can go on the engineering side and add that to usage ping. In the future, when we're creating, when we're breaking down these issues, that request should really be part of the acceptance criteria. Like every feature that we build, we on engineering should either add something to Snowplow if we want to track it through .com, add something to usage ping if we want to get that data for self-managed, which for most cases we will want to. We really need to do that as we're building out the feature. So that's what I'm asking of you all on the product side, just as we're documenting the features, just put in a little line. And Gabe, I know you've been doing that for a bit now, but if we can get that to all, and then we won't actually have that feature be done until there is either usage ping tracking or snowplow tracking.
Yeah, I'll start putting that in and be more specific with it. Thank you. That's great.
Actually, yeah, I think we talked about this, and then I think the discussion was adding that to the issue, like new feature request issue template. But I think that changes it for everybody, right? So, but yeah, so like for example, I have it in the health tracking status work. So Donald, I hope that is in part of the verification.
Should be.
Yeah, I put it in like with the template that we have now for features, I put it under success criteria. There's 2 sub bullets that I recommend using, like metrics and then also acceptance criteria, I think, or how we'll know when we're done or something like that. And so I usually put it under that section of the feature template just as a checklist where, I mean, I put all the acceptance criteria right there. So I'm happy to share some issues if people want to look at them. Anything else that we want to touch on there? And thanks, Donald. I thought that was really good feedback too and accurate. So, okay, cool. Next, I totally missed the Jira technical discussion this morning because it's on. I wasn't on the invite and I had my other calendar turned off, or the team calendar turned off. Sorry about that. Real quick, not to duplicate the conversation, but just want to make sure that we're not blocked on anything, or if there's anything that I need to take care of immediately to help move people forward. Thanks, John, for adding me to the calendar event.
Yeah, nothing that is blocking. I think we'll need to address tracking the external issue identifier in MVC so that we don't go back to that after we release the next iteration. And then another thing is that we're currently sharing a data structure with the other imports, but the other imports don't have this recurrent thing like running them over and over again. So that's okay for those imports. Doesn't work as well with Jira because it can conflict with another feature called mirroring. Yeah, we can sort of trick it and hack it for the MVC, but it would be good if we'll get time, it would be good to get it into MVC, but if not, it would be good to have a separate data structure for the actual Jira import, considering it can be run multiple times on the same project. So those are kind of the two newer things that popped up like last week or so.
Yeah, I spent some time responding to the storing the project or the issue key from Jira in that issue that you raised. And I basically said it's fine if we want to store it for this iteration, so we don't have to go back and re-import to get that key in the right place later. But we shouldn't do anything with it beyond that. So there's more stuff in that issue, and I think is for the taking the time to like fix the data structure for recurring imports. I know for a fact we will have other importers that behave in a similar way in the future. Rally, like anything that is a project management tool, basically is gonna has the same characteristics as importing from Jira. I would say like do the minimum amount we need to do, so that we don't accrue a ton of debt, but also to like don't over engineer it until we get to another importer from another service or something where we actually need to invest and make it even better, if that makes sense. So take the time to do it right, but I wouldn't over engineer it yet.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I think it still will be very different for every single import because every single import is just different. It gathers different data and behaves differently and has a different flow. So it probably will be very specific to each of the importers. But yeah, it is going to work, but yeah, it's somewhat a hack.
I don't like hacks in production software, so I would say like let's talk as a team and figure out what we need to do to make sure it's not that. Just because like that's where like somebody could come along, not you, a year from now and need to work on it and not know exactly how it's supposed to work. Or anyway, but thank you for bringing that up. Did you want to verbalize the next thing, Alex?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So as on the progress of the issue, I think we're yet to start on the UI stuff, the flow itself, how we're importing all of those pages where we see the progress and reporting on how many imports we're on and so on and so forth. So that's yet to be done. What's being worked on for the last week was the Sidekick importers and fetching issues and like running them, saving them into the database actually. And the Yarka working on the parser. So the front end plus back end, what referred to UI UX still needs to be done. So yeah.
Yes, on the front end side, Kong is going to be working pretty heavily on, that's his number one priority, is the Jira import stuff. So he'll be taking the lead on that, and we'll determine if we need to bring in anyone else to work on that. But one thing we did want to talk about was, I don't think we have the, we haven't built out the APIs to start an import, have we? It's all done through our private APIs using Haml, using like a traditional post form.
Yes. Yeah. So currently, what we have on that side is currently what was in the POC, which is the controller and the Haml file. So yeah. So I guess we need to add the APIs first and then start on the front end work, or does it matter, or does it not?
It doesn't. We just need to know if we're going to get those APIs done or try to get those done in 12.10, and whether we should be building it as ideally as a Vue app using those APIs, or if we should keep it in HAML like the POC is. So my question for you is, how large of an effort is it to open up to expose those APIs essentially?
Okay, I'll do the APIs. I think, well, it's not big enough an effort. I don't think. It's pretty much moving the code from the controller into a API endpoint. So yeah, that should be, I don't know, maybe, well, considering reviews, I don't know, but like development work, maybe a day worth of work or something like that.
Cool. Yeah, let's do that then.
Cool. Holly, did you want to take the next one?
Yeah, it's just a quick update on that. We spoke a little bit about showing success and failed numbers of imports, and it sounds like that's possible, but we might need to clarify what those terms mean in this context. So you and I can talk about how that manifests in the UI, but my thought was just that we would help the user to understand what we mean when we say success or fail in case there's any gray area there. But it sounds like it should be doable to show a number to give them some insight.
Cool. Yeah, I think we can talk about the details, but more or less tell them why it failed and where it failed is the goal with that. You know, like it either failed on some specific issue because some specific field, or I don't know if we can get that granular. But the more context we can add to their reporting, the better it would be, because then we can at least like start logging those failures. And what are we using for logging right now? Whatever we're using for logging. And that way we should be able to then start to see like what the common problems are at scale. And then we can kind of target fixing the specific things as they happen. So I almost like to make sure that we're logging that too. With whatever, if we're using GraphQL or something else, then it'll be a little bit different. I'll leave that up to engineers to figure out how to do, but it would be cool to be able to go look through the logs and understand the specific reasons why it's failing so we can prioritize them.
Well, we do have the logging, but I mean, that would be slightly different from reporting it back to the user. So like as I raised it, so what happens if an issue is, well, it's probably not for him to see, because right now if we are not doing commands or anything related to the issue, we just do the issue description and summary and whatever. So if the issue is not saved, then obviously it's failed. But then the question is, if the issue is imported but some commands did not import, or one of the attachments was not imported because it was not retrieved from the JIRA, or different situations like that, is that issue considered successful or probably not, to what degree, and so on and so forth. So there is some granularity there, but probably not for MVC.
Cool. Yeah, not an MVC. We can iterate on that as we go. All right, I think I have the next one. I think, Donald, you originally opened up the merge request to put the cycle time goal in our process improvements we're working towards. How should we start to measure that, I guess, is the question. Because I think if we are taking the Kanban first approach, using lead time is a measure of like setting expectations about when we'll be done with things is great. But we need to be able to see it somewhere. So I was curious if you had any ideas.
Not off the top of my head. Yeah, we should start tracking it. I'm interested to see or to hear if, and it would be helpful to actually see data to support it. But if anyone just not using data, has anyone noticed that issues have been in smaller week-long chunks yet, or has there been any change since we started to chunk issues into smaller pieces? No, that's okay. Jan, are you on the call? You wanna?
Yes. I added just one question to limits. I was wondering if there is more detailed documentation behind this idea and about the reasoning why the specific limits are set in this way. So to better understand this.
Yeah, I'll add the documentation for that. Basic queuing theory is like any process that's operating 100% is inefficient. And so like if we have, let's say 10 people on the team and we have a work in progress limit of 10, that would be basically putting the system at 100% of its capacity. And you generally want to reduce that a little bit. So there's slack in the system to handle like other parts of the processes in different places. So it's just also a starting point. And I think that's where, based on like the goal, I think, is measuring improvement and what is that kind of cycle time. Like, because so the working theory is the less work you have in progress, the faster each item will like go through a given process. And we need to look and see like how does that impact overall lead time and cycle time. And then based on those numbers, you then figure out which part of your process is the slowest one. So we actually have to measure time and process for each list, and then we can focus on fixing one process. So if it turns out reviews is like where time is spent, it has the highest cycle time within that one stage, then we would focus as a team on how can we improve or reduce our time spent in reviews, which a lot of the time is probably spent waiting, which is like a sign of waste. So it's just the start of what I hope to be more metrics that we can put in place to understand where the bottlenecks are in our processes so that we can work together as a team to improve it. But it was just a starting point based on some basic theory.
Yeah, cool, thanks. Yeah, I understand this analysis, or better understanding the analysis, how long some stage, how much time it takes. I was more curious about the specific limits we set for each of the stage, because at this point I'm not a big fan of these limits, to be honest, and I would better understand it first before I set some negative opinion about this. I think there are some reasonable situations when it makes sense to switch context. For example, there are situations when I'm waiting for feedback to proceed with something, and it's not very valuable to switch it from in development to other stage and then move it back when I get the feedback and I can continue on this stuff. Also, it's handy to have some long-term or another issue I can rest on when I'm working on some high priority stuff. So I found it quite usable to have a couple of things in progress, but I understand that switching context is expensive in some situations. So I would be interested in more specific numbers or measurements, why we set it to some number to compare with my experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for the feedback. And I would welcome even negative comments at any point. Like everybody's can have their own opinion, and it's valid if you feel a certain way. So please share as like you struggle or don't agree with some of the things. It's not perfect by any means, but I think the underlying goal is that like instead of picking up a new issue, how can you contribute to an existing issue to help move it forward that might not be yours, you know? So like taking the approach of, let's say there was only 5 work in progress items, and for 10 people, like how could those 10 people work collectively to move those 5 items forward and pull something through? And I think that's where right now we've kind of had the mentality where everybody gets assigned one issue and works on that one issue. And then when they're done with that one issue, they pull in a new issue. But I'm wondering if there's, it's also an experiment. I'm wondering if people working collectively together on issues to move them through will help them go faster than just divvying everything up and then people not really collaborating that much until the review stage. So
I see. It's interesting idea. On the other side, I wonder if it wouldn't mean that we should improve breaking the issue in that case, because I would expect that allocating more people on an issue which is in progress requires additional time to get them into context of the problem. And if the issue can be divided into between multiple people, I would expect that in many cases it also means that the issue can be broken down to smaller pieces. So we should typically do this in a previous stage when breaking the issue into smaller parts.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the outcome that we would want. And I think that's a great one. I also think too, like if you have your work in progress limits in dev and then in review, you should be able to have one issue that you're working on in dev and then one in review. And so the idea is like something shouldn't move from in dev to in review until there's a space in review. It's like a pull system. And so that way you can work more diligently with whoever is reviewing your MR to push that forward. But I agree, like I'm going to record a video and I'm going to write up some documentation kind of explaining the experiment. And I would like some help in getting some of the metrics in place to measure it. But then if we find it doesn't actually improve anything, then I don't want to change processes for the sake of processes. Like, then we can stop doing it. That makes sense.
Cool, thanks.
I think we're supposed to break for the COVID AMA, so. So
Thanks.
I don't know. Put that in. Yeah.
Thanks all.
Thanks everybody. Have a wonderful week. I appreciate each of you.